All right, yeah. So I haven't made a video in a little bit. It's been busy working, and I think the family got COVID while I was away in Colorado, and then they were better by the time I got back. And then the guy I was working with got COVID, uh, and I was working with him directly, so they made me stay at home for a week, but to isolate, I guess, to quarantine. But I didn't get it. I went and got a test done. I haven't heard the results, but I'm fine. I haven't been sick at all. But they're paying me. They're keeping me on the payroll while I'm just sitting at home 40 hours this week. So that's cool. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to, don't want a week to go by and then not make anything anyways. I've just been poking away, like picking away little stuff on Onix Rift. Just a few things. But we'll just jump right in here. So I think in a previous video, I talked a little bit about the pixel art I was working on, because I wanted to change the item use animation in Onix Rift, and I wanted it to be kind of a blanket unanimous, like when you use an item it shows this same animation, and as far as what the item does for the hero is just, if it's a healing item, it'll show him perform the animation and it'll heal his hit points. If it's an item to boost his skill points, then it'll do the same animation. Just a blanket unanimous animation that matches for any item use. And if I want to add something after that, that's fine, but the initial animation will be the same for him every time. Part of it was just, I wanted the item use needs to match like the cadence of the game, the cadence of combat, let's say. And I felt that previously, I think he just knelt down and he would use an item and you would see the item use above his head, but it felt a little slow. It felt like it slowed gameplay down. And I don't mind it stopping to perform the animation, kind of like the magic spells or the skill use. It kind of freezes everything, and then he'll perform the skill, it executes the damage, and then goes back to live action. So I don't mind it stopping for a minute or a couple seconds. But the item use just felt like it was really slow, like a little too slow and clunky. It didn't fit, like I said, it didn't match the cadence of the combat that I was going for. And I think I did a couple different animations, like pixel art. See if I can find them here. One of them, it was kind of him throwing an item, or at least doing kind of a throwing motion over his head. And it was fine. This is the one of the sketch sheets that I was using, so you can ignore that. So basically, when he would use an item, see, this is his four frame animation for throwing something, and he wasn't going to be holding anything necessarily. It's just to show the animation of him throwing, and then like the item. Then it would show the item animation of like whatever one he was using. Now I put it in to the game, imported all the sprite sheets. Sprite sheets into the pictures, because that's what we're doing, is pictures for everything. You guys already know that. Excuse me. But I didn't care for it. I don't know why I looked at it. I think maybe it's just how I drew it. It didn't work for me, man. I wasn't liking it. So I went through and did another drawing, and it was, I think this might be it. Yeah, so, and I decided to make him, he'll jump in the air, and we'll get the little, I think I mentioned I wanted to kind of do a little sharp sparkle or like a shine when he uses an item, and that'll be the blanket, okay, he jumped up and used this item. The sparkle would just represent whatever generic item he's using. So basically what I'm at right now, I'm still not 100% sold on it, but it seems to fit the cadence of combat, like I mentioned. He just jumps up. This is his jumping animation, so you'll be running around, and then you'll execute the item use, and he just runs through this frame-by-frame animation where he jumps up, does a little sparkle above his head, and then he jumps back, lands back onto the ground, and that was your item use. So we'll exit out of that, and then in-game, it just seems to fit, I think. We'll just jump into one of these files, give it a test run. We'll do this. So you're running around, and I have a Cobalt Heart equipped, just a generic healing. It's one of the generic healing items in the game. So I'm running around. Let's let one of these guys hit me. Alright, he got me. And then I'm running. And I don't know if you caught that, but that was the item use. So I'll do it without a bunch of enemies attacking me on screen, just so you get a good visual of it. So I execute my item with the X button. He does a quick jump, and then, you saw the little sparkle, and it healed him. Now, the idea behind it is, again, kind of match the cadence of running around in the middle of combat, and you don't have to stop and wait for a long battle animation of an item being executed to get back into the action. And I think it fits all right. I like how it's quick, and I like how it ends. Now, another thing, again, to kind of improve the cadence of combat, the live action aspect of it, was when your hero took damage. Previously, your guy would get hit, and it would be a really long animation of him getting hit and falling to the ground, and then he wakes up and he blinks his eyes and then jumps back up, and then the player gets control again and he's ready to fight. And I think Kempfer, he gave me a bunch of feedback right when I uploaded it previously, and that was one of the things he said. Yeah, I think your damage animation is just way too long for being hit every single time, and he was right. It looked fine, but it was a little excessive. You could take one hit point of damage, and your guy would fly back and land on his back, and you have to sit there and wait for him to stand up. And then, so from there, I added basically a conditional branch, and it was two different things. One of two things would happen when you got hit. If it did less, so if your character has 39 hit points, I have in my corner right here. If it did like less than half damage, or half of the amount of his total hit points, so he has 39 hit points. If it did less than half of that, your guy it would be one frame, and he would just kind of get hit. It would show him getting hit animation, and then right back to the action. And that animation only took, 0.3 of a second. So that improved it quite a bit. But what I actually did was I even upped it a little bit more. So basically now in combat, if you're fighting, if you take damage and it's less than like 1/4 of his total hit points, the screen barely stops. He doesn't even change his animation. I think it just flashes. I think the character flashes once. And that was just, again, to help not slow the screen down during combat more than it needs to. So if he takes really low damage, he'll basically just be character flash. That would have been medium damage right there. The second hit that I just took was him just flashing, but you can still run around. It doesn't slow you down at all. And then, if you take damage more than half of his hit points, it'll do the third option, which is he's going to get hit and fall to the ground. So basically, I turned one animation. I went from one animation, the longer one, to a conditional branch with two possible outcomes, and now I've made it with three. So there's the first one, which is you took hardly any damage, and your guy doesn't even stop. You can still run around. He just kind of flashes, and the screen shakes a little bit. Medium damage is him pausing just for a split second. His frame changes once, but then it goes back to the action. And then the third type of hit is heavy damage, and he'll fall to the ground. You have to wait for him to recover from that. Yeah, he was standing on an event there. That's why I didn't hit him. But that's kind of, as far as the cadence of the game, that's three things that I've kind of worked on, like the item use animation, his hit, how the engine handles him being hit, whether it's low, medium, or heavy damage. And then, I don't remember what the other thing was. It'll come back to me, don't worry. And so previously, when I, again, going through and trying to adjust so the game pace is as quick as it can be during combat and less intrusive to the player when he gets hit or takes damage or something. Going back to that, so earlier when I had made the video about the screen pan, so I kind of made my own screen pan scheme, a little smart screen pan. It kind of follows the hero, it slows down, when you're around an enemy, and then once you clear the area of enemies, it speeds up again, and you're back to kind of centered on the hero. Well, implementing that, it pops up issues that didn't exist before on previous enemies, and one of those that I found was when you're fighting the first boss of the game, the Boom Bloom. Before, it all worked fine, but once I set that pan up, I noticed that when you were fighting bosses, when you would enter the screen, when you're near the boss, the screen pan slows down, and it actually, I didn't like it because the bosses move around quite a bit all over the map, and they were off of camera quite a bit after I changed that screen pan, because you're still within the radius that the hero is close enough to the enemy, the boss, that the screen pan slows down. So when the boss moves across the screen, he's just off camera, and when you try to run over to get to him, the pan is really slow moving over. So it created some issues there. And so to handle that, what I did was, in any boss scenario, the screen pan goes away, and it's back, and the special camera pan goes away, and it goes to the hero is centered on the map. So I find it, in my head, I think about it similar to, I remember playing Star Fox 64, and I remember after you'd get through the whole level, the camera is kind of behind the ship, and when you'd get to a boss area, it would go to all range mode, is what the game called it, and it was, you could fly around in this 360 degree environment, and you weren't just constantly flying forward. So it's similar to that, at least in concept. So the camera does its camera pan when you're running around any normal individual map and any random enemies that are around, but when you get to a boss, it goes to a normal screen pan that you would see in any RPG Maker game, where the hero is centered on the screen, and he's never off camera, but that allows you to see equal distance all the way around the player character, so you can kind of see what's going on around you. And I'll show you how that, and I think it was the right move. I'll show you here. This is just the Boom Bloom. So you've seen the screen pan, how it slows down and lags when you're around enemies. Well, this is a boss fight, and this is how the boss fights are handled. So we go through this little animation. Boom Bloom, got to fight him. And if you notice, the camera stays locked onto the hero. Now, in doing this, because I locked it back onto the hero, an issue came up. So do you see this little bouncing, the boom ball that he throws at me? Well, after I implemented that, and it follows the hero around, well, the way that boom ball works is when it's bouncing around the screen at your hero, before you could run around freely and the camera kind of stayed locked in place. Well, once I had it to where the camera's always following the hero, the way that ball is programmed is it finds the hero's screen coordinates. That ball bounces towards those coordinates. If you move one step over from those coordinates, the ball still bounces to your original coordinates. And so if you're still not in that spot, it doesn't do any damage because the ball's not hitting you. And it goes through, I think, 5 bounces before it disappears, and he can recast it, or you're free to just run around and not have to worry about that ball anymore. Well, when I locked the hero center screen, well, his screen X and Y coordinates never change. He's always directly in the middle of the screen. So after I changed that, and he's always in the middle of the screen, that ball, no matter what, it would fly down, and because your screen coordinates aren't changing, you're always centered, so the screen coordinates, they're always the same, 120 by whatever, the X and Y. That ball would always hit you no matter what. You could run away, and the shadow just followed you, and that ball would hit you. So, and I wanted that ball to be avoidable. So basically, I just figured it out this morning, actually, because it didn't click in my head. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working all of a sudden, and I had to break it down, in my head, starting to think like, well, what have I changed since I last played this boss? And I was actually, once I thought about it, I was pretty proud of myself. I figured it out fairly quick. But it was something I had to go back and address. So now when that ball gets cast, if you watch, the screen stays locked onto your hero, but when that ball gets cast, I need those screen coordinates to update, and not update to where I'm just always in the same coordinates. So basically, I made it to where when he does cast that ball, so right now, the camera's following the hero, and if you watch, when he does cast, he'll cast it in just a second. I'll give him some damage. when he does cast it, right when he casts it, the screen does that lock again, and you can see how that makes it to where I can dodge it. And then when the ball goes away, it goes back to your hero centered on the screen again. Yep, and there we go, back to center. So that was an issue that popped up that was interesting, and it was important to figure it out and not change how that boom ball worked. I started kind of playing with it, I was going to make it work a little differently. I was going to use an event to land in one spot, so I didn't have to go off of screen coordinates to figure if it hit you and you took damage or not. But it was a pretty simple fix. I just had to add that screen pan on when that ball gets cast, and then turn it off once the ball goes away. And it solved it. And I'm sorry, I was getting into why it was important. So there's other enemies in the game that when you approach them, some of their special skills, some of their regular attacks. So the eagle is one. I think the little bird enemies, after you beat the boom bloom, when you go into the mountain area, I think they have an attack that relies on screen coordinates. And it relies on the fact that your hero, when he moves, is not at the exact same coordinates every time. And so I needed to get it figured out how to fix it here, because then I know how to fix it with other enemies. And it wasn't a big issue. There's only maybe one or two other enemies. So I think the bird ones, maybe the holems, the guys that throw the gem tops, the big rock guys, I think maybe they have something that when they attack, your screen coordinates matter. And then the eagle on the Eerie, he is another one that has an attack that you need to be able to dodge it. And I think it's the feather needle when he shoots that at you. And then one other thing. This is just kind of what I've been poking around on when I get a chance. A lot of complaints. The feedback I'd gotten, I mentioned before on the eagle. It's just kind of a boring spam attack, heal, spam attack, heal. So I actually went through. So there was a healing item that I found was unnecessary. It was the cobalt orb, not the cobalt heart. The cobalt heart heals like 50 hit points, and then a better healing item later on is the cobalt orb, and that healed like 250. But I also have a juju orb that heals like 100 hit points. So basically what I've done is I've repurposed that cobalt heart, and it increases your LP or your SP, your skill points or limit points, whatever you want to call them. So if your red bar is down, halfway, you could use that item and it'll give you like 10 SP points. So you get those skill points or the limit points by getting hit. Every time you get hit, you get so many skill points depending on how hard of a hit you took. Limit points depending on how hard of a hit you took. And so this item allows the character to fill that bar up and use his skill attack without getting hit. So I basically redesigned the eagle off of that concept, and we'll go in here and show you. So I've also kind of peppered through, I was playing, I think it was, I can't remember. Well, I was playing a game, someone's game that they made on RPG Maker, and I've noticed that they put a lot of items. Like you could walk up to a barrel and, hit the action key and you would find a random item. Excuse me. And I realized like every area I was in, I was clicking on a lot of stuff, and it was really fun and exciting when I would find a hidden item or when I'd come into a room and there's a treasure chest I could open. And I was like, man, I definitely am lacking in like the random treasures, not the treasure drops from the enemies, because those just are treasure chests because that's kind of what Secret Mana did, and I thought it was cool. But actually finding a treasure in a room that you open once and then you can't open it again. And so I went through and kind of threw those over into some of these earlier maps because I found that I had a lot of fun every time I was opening a chest or finding a random item. And I just thought, I'm like, man, that's something my game's lacking. And as much fun as it was to find some of that stuff, I just thought, I want more of that in my game. So basically, if you've played, when you get up to the Eerie, or in the mountain, when you get up to the Eagle Eerie, not a lot, just random treasure drops. There wasn't any chests that you could find other than I think maybe the armor. But because I added those limit orbs that fill up your limit points, this treasure chest was one that when you first come into this map, so this is right before the eagle boss. So you'd come up here into this map, and you'd find that treasure chest, and this is the first spot that you'd get a limit, those limit orbs. So you get 4 of them. Now I've designed the eagle boss around that. So now the eagle is weak to your skills, and it won't just do extra damage. When you hit him with the skill, it actually, he freezes and falls to the ground, and it allows you to sit there and rack up a bunch of damage on him. So it basically creates strategy. So you have to, if you figure out, when you figure out that skills is what he's weak to, he becomes really a lot easier anyways, because he has 2 magic spells that are unavoidable except for by stats. If your stats are high enough, they can miss, I think. But he has 2 physical attacks that are actually avoidable. The needle feather one, when he shoots at you, it works like I talked earlier, or like I mentioned earlier, it's off of screen coordinates. So when he shoots that feather, it goes to the character's current screen coordinates. But if you move to the right, obviously it's going to hit your previous coordinates, so it's not going to hit you, so you can dodge it. And then also his flyby attack, where he goes off the screen, and if he sweeps through, if you don't move and he touches you, you get hit. Or if you just step down or out of the way, he'll miss you. So he's got 2 unavoidable attacks, magic attacks, and 2 that are dodgeable. So I'll just do a quick little run through and show you what I've done to kind of... someone told me that they thought the Boom Bloom boss was like a lot better, a lot funner to play than the Eagle. So I wanted him to be more like that. I wanted him to have a strategy that would... And of course I'm doing my screen record, so it's jumpy, which is frustrating. So here he appears to be the same. See, I can dodge that one. Oh, here we go. He's casting Gale on me. Did a little magic animation here. It's not the best, but I'm trying. I'm working on it, trying to make it better. Okay, so you can see my limit points are full. So when I get close to him and I execute my skill, he falls to the ground, and now he's vulnerable to every attack. He can't move around. Not until... So he has so much time. I think he sits there for like 8 seconds. And then he goes back up. So at that point, we can go into the items that I said we got. Here's the limit. Limit orb recovers 25 limit points. We're going to equip it. And instead of waiting for him to attack me, I'm going to use one. And now my skills are full, and I can hit him again. And so it gives you 4 of them. I think in this playthrough, my guy's a little higher level. So he's really easy. I can kill him pretty easily. But that way you don't have to wait. There's a little strategy. You don't just have to wait to get hit for your skill points to fill up. Once you figure out that that's what he's weak to, it's pretty much go at him and do as much damage as possible after you use a skill. You have 8 seconds from when you hit him with that skill where he falls down. And then he goes back to moving around. So I really wanted to showcase that. Of course, I've mentioned it before. I'm recording my screen. I'm recording audio. And it kind of sucks because it makes the screen skip when I'm trying to show you guys stuff. But my girlfriend says she's going to get me a new computer for my birthday here in a couple months. So that'll be cool. Hopefully it'll be a good enough one where it's not everything skipping when I'm trying to make a video. But yeah, so those are some changes that I've been working on in the past week or two. Again, just refining stuff. I always am kind of poking around on pixel. I'm actually getting to a point where I have quite a bit of pixel art made up for the game. So when I do get to eventing like the next area with the amphibites, it'll hopefully move pretty quickly. I'm currently working on some set pieces is what I got to work on. So most of the animations for the Amphibite King are completed. I think you've seen those before. And then, so I need set pieces made, and I have a whole theme for that Amphibite dungeon. So it's I even have drawings done on paper, so I know what I need to do for the set pieces. Just sitting down and actually doing them is where it's like, okay. And like I said, I've been working on more of like when he uses an item. Like I said, that's kind of the sprite sheets that I've been working on, and then actually like refining stuff in the common event database. Because the goal would be right now all the items are set up to like if you use an item, that whatever item's equipped, it goes to that common event. Now, I'd like to have all the items set up on one common event page with just a bunch of different labels. And when you equip an item, let's say there's a variable named item in use. If that variable equals 1, that means that your cobalt heart's equipped, and so it'll just jump to label 3 to do that, to execute the cobalt heart animation. I'd like to consolidate. Right now I have 4 or 5 different items that all have their own common event, and it was always intended to put them on one sheet, but for testing purposes, I like to isolate when I'm making something that has graphic changes or animation changes and healing your items. I like to isolate first, and then when I get it the way I want, and this is the first time that I'm like, okay, I think I'm going in the right direction with item use as far as animations and stuff like that. As far as animations, to where I'm happy with how it's looking and working out. So now I'm going to get to the point where I'm consolidating all of those item use animations to like one sheet or one common event. But yeah, I just wanted to make a quick video and show you guys what I've been working on the past little bit. I also did a little work on his running animation. You probably won't even notice the difference right here just looking at it, but I'm a little happier with it. I think before his sword was kind of changing angles when you were looking at him sideways and he was running, and now it's just kind of bouncing back and forth from the left side to his right side. So I like how that looks a little bit better. And then I have a few other things I'm kind of just working on. Something I've actually changed is before the thought process as far as item magic use is you get that mystic conch, and then the magic is actually, that's your magic item, and when you have it equipped, you can press that button, the X button, and it'll bring up your magic menu. Well, the way it was going to work before is you get that mystic conch, and as you get those spells imbued into the mystic conch, the more you use them, let's say you would have to use the fire spell 25 times, and then your guy actually would learn the spell, so you could use them directly from your menu instead of using the item. But just thinking about it, it's like wasting an item slot, because eventually you're going to learn all those spells, and they'll get to a point where you're never going to need your Mystic Conch equipped. So I think I'm changing that to where they just give you the magic, and from the beginning you use it directly from your menu, because there's no reason to use up a whole item slot with an item that's just going to teach you things, the magic skills. Eventually that item's going to be pointless to have. But so that's something else that I'm working on. It's going to be changed. So yeah, just wanted to make a quick video for you guys. I'll post it here in a little bit. Hopefully you guys check it out. Let me know what you think about the item use animation especially. Again, I think it just helps with the tempo of combat, and that's what I've been kind of focusing on the last week or two, is basically the game tempo during combat. And then obviously let me know what you think as far as what you saw with the eagle. If you've played it before, hopefully you can see it and be like, oh yeah, that's a good change, man, because it really wasn't a fun boss before, and I think it's a lot better now. But yeah, take care, guys.